Hello students and viewers at home. My name is Onuegbu Francisca C. from Physical and Health Education Department, St. Charles College, Onitsha. Our topic today is drug use, drug misuse, and drug abuse. Before we go on, let's see the specific objective for the lesson. By the end of the lesson, you students should be able to explain the meaning of drugs, drug use, drug misuse, and drug abuse. Outline reasons for drug misuse. State ways of initiating people into drug use. Mention implications of drug misuse and drug abuse. Outline ways of preventing drug misuse and drug abuse. Let's move into details. Meanings of drugs, drug use, drug misuse, and drug abuse. What is drug? A drug is any chemical substance, not food, when taken, alters or changes the state or functions of the body tissues and organs. The drugs taken may be legal and socially acceptable when they are used for prevention and the treatment of disease. Then what is drug use? This is when one takes drug or the act of taking drugs. The drugs may be prescribed or not prescribed by a qualified medical personnel. Then by taking these drugs, whether prescribed or not prescribed, people are initiated into using these drugs in different ways. 1. Experimental drug use. How do you initiate people into these drugs by experiment? Some students, while joining their peer groups, may like to test or see how certain drugs looks like or taste like. For example, when we talk of these drugs, not only those drugs used as tablets when we are sick or syrup, they include alcohol, hard drugs like India hemp, known as Igbo, or cocaine. These drugs, some students like to test them, or they may be forced to test them. By doing so, it is known as experimental drug use. The recreational drug use. By initiating people into drug use under recreation, when you go out, maybe during your free time or leisure time, you go out with your friends where you are watching certain activities or where you are playing certain activities. At a time, you may be forced to or like to see yourselves or see your friends will invite you to come, let's enjoy. By so doing, there are certain drinks you are not used to, like beer. As a student, you are not used to taking beers, but under that condition, you may not like to test the beer. That is under recreational activities. Then we have other ways by which people are initiated into drug use. That is by situational drug use. Maybe certain conditions lead you to taking that drugs. Intensify drug use and compulsive drug use, where you may be forced to, whether you like it or not, to take that drugs. These are ways by which people are initiated into drug use. Drug misuse. A drug is misused when it is over or underused, or it is given to another person to use. A drug not used as prescribed and dispensed by a qualified medical personnel is misuse. When we talk of drug misuse, we mean taking the drugs the way it is not prescribed for you. That is misusing drugs. You may be asked to take the drugs 2 times 2 or 1 times 1, and you now decide to take it. If you are asked to take it 2 times 2, you now take it 1 times 1 or 1 times 2. You are overusing the drugs or underusing the drugs. That is drug misuse. Then we have drug abuse. How do you abuse the drugs? This is a regular and excessive use of drug prescribed and not prescribed by a qualified medical personnel, which results in dependence. It means that the drug is taken to the extent that abuser needs it always and at a higher dose. Without it, the abuser cannot feel comfortable. That is drug abuse. I've seen these boys out there every time they used to smoke all these hard drugs, Indian hemp, cocaine, taking it every day or every time. And not only that they take it every day, but in the excessive use. Or even taking these beers. You form the habit of taking beers always. It has become part of you. that is, you are abusing the whole thing. That is drug abuse. What are the health implications of drug misuse and drug abuse? Taking these drugs, they all have health implications on you. And one of these health implications, one, poor nourishment. Some people take these drugs without taking diet food or well-nourished food. By taking these drugs without proper taking good food, you have poor nourishment. The risk of HIV and sexually transmitted infections. Some people take these drugs to increase the libido in sexual urge or to decrease. If you take it for increase in libido, it now leads you to having sex indiscriminately, and by then you can contract disease or sexually transmitted infections. These drugs increases the risk of injuries and accidents. For those that are used in taking alcohols or taking this cocaine or Igbo, all these things, most of them may be drivers or they either private drivers or commercial drivers. After taking all these things, they move inside vehicle. While on the road, they can sustain injuries or accidents because their eyes are no more clear. Then, apart from all these things, we have other ways, other health implications of using this drug use and drug misuse. Number one, again, drugs damage vital organs of the body. Taking these hard drugs, they have effects on our vital organs. Others, it brings about miscarriages and birth defects. It makes one insane or mad. That one is very common. It causes low erection and impotence. It leads to infertility in men, problems of discipline. Having seen the health implications of drug misuse and drug abuse, let's move into the categories of drug use, drug misuse, and drug abuse. We have different drug use. These drugs are prescribed drugs, non-prescription drugs, gateway drugs, or habit-forming drugs. Prescription drugs are those drugs prescribed by medical personnel when you are sick. They may be misuse or abuse. People can equally abuse antibiotics, analgesics. These are under prescription drugs. The non-prescription drugs, we have those drugs not prescribed by medical personnel, but you decide using it on your own. There are all these hard drugs too. Even not these analgesics, they are equally, doctors may not prescribe it for you, and you can equally misuse it or abuse it. Then we have gateway drugs or habit-forming drugs. These gateway drugs or habit-forming drugs are those drugs which, when you do not see them, can lead you to the nearest or similar drugs. So these drugs, for example, you are fond of taking lager beer every time or mineral drinks every time. But when there is no those drinks for you, you may decide to take rum or those ones known as kai kai or hot because there's no beer. That is getting way to those drugs. And you have, because we have formed the habit of taking those drugs. And the next one is psychoactive drugs. Then when we talk of psychoactive drugs, there are those drugs when taking you feel very high. And these drugs normally used by these performers, maybe those dancers or these movie actors, so that when they move into the stage, they will be feel very high, they will not feel shine. And that is the psychoactive drugs. So these are the categories of drugs misuse and abuse. The reasons for drugs misuse and abuse. People have their reasons for indulging into these drugs. Number one is to get relief from burden and depression. Some people may be disturbed in one way or the other. They decide, especially men, they decide taking, those fond of taking cigarettes, they decide taking cigarettes or take beer or anything they like. That is one of the reasons for taking those drugs. Then to be accepted by friends among social circle. Yes, for those of you who like joining their peer groups, whatever your peer groups did, we like to do it. So by so doing, if you are fond of taking beers or taking one cigarette or the other, for you to join, you now join them in taking these drugs for you to be accepted by your friends and among social groups. Then for the improvement of physical performance and others, some people take these drugs for making their performance better. That is, especially the sportsmen and the women, to become bold and daring. There's some people, when they want to come out in a stage or in any way, they would like to take certain drugs for them to be bold and not fearful. They stay awake far into the night. These are for students and those people that have any exam or one thing or the other. They would like to take certain drugs for them to keep awake in the night, then to improve or reduce sexual desire. Some people use these drugs to increase their sexual libido, maybe to have high increase of sexual desire or to have low sexual desire, to deaden life's disappointments. Some people may be disappointed in life. For them to forget what is happening, they take certain drugs that will help them to forget everything about that problem. Then for realization, to overcome loneliness, to be high and have a longer mood. These are reasons why some people misuse and abuse their drugs. Having seen all these things, how do we prevent this drug misuse and abuse? The following are useful in preventing drug misuse and abuse. 1. There should be seminars and workshops to educate youth on evils of misuse and abuse of drugs. Some of our youth don't even know the implications of taking these drugs. And for them to create awareness or to know what is happening, still seminars and workshops are very necessary to educate them on the evils of using those drugs. The electronic and printing medias should involve in campaign against drug abuse. In campaigning against drug abuse, will students or youth may like to see the printing media that is showing them people that are making use, abusing those drugs or misusing those drugs, how they look like. By so doing, maybe they should educate themselves. Then all educational institutions should have a counselor who advises and counsels youth on why it is bad to use and abuse drugs. Like we have one in our school, counselor, well-qualified counselor, who advises students. So it is important all educational institutions should have these counselors. While these counselors see maybe behavior of certain students, he may call them now and counsel them and indicate or find out why they are misbehaving or why they are behaving the way they are behaving. This is very important. So there should be enough recreational centers to keep youth busy, physically and mentally. Yes, having recreational activities in a school or in any way, even in a community, in a center, are very important. Because engaging in this drug abuse at times is caused by loneliness, busy doing nothing. But when these students have places where they can perform different types of activities, they can now engage themselves by so doing, forget about anything drug. Then film shows or video clips of the effects of drug use and abuse should be shown to the youth. Yes, as I've said before, the youth will like to see the videos, or they should be shown those video clips where these people making use of abusing drugs or misusing drugs, how they look or where they find themselves. Then town criers should be used to communicate to youth where there is no television, radio or newspapers of the effect of drug abuse. In certain communities, you should have town criers. When we have this type of problems in a town or community, then these town criers will now go around the town to announce maybe the implications of this drug abuse or news to the hearing of every youth or everybody. There should be proper and adequate enforcement of drug laws. This is very important too. The government should look into it. Enforcing drug laws Though we have one, they have to now sit up and make sure they put it in force. Having seen the preventions of drugs, misuse and abuse, we are now going to see the drugs being abused in sports. The popular drugs abused in sports is anabolic steroids. As an example, danazol. It is made from a natural sexual hormone. This is made into tablets, capsules, and injectable. These sportsmen and women misuse and abuse these drugs for the following reasons. One, they use it to improve and enhance their sports performance, to increase the size, strength, and power of the muscles to perform physical activities, to delay physical fatigue. Then the effects of using this steroid includes serious health conditions, such as, that is when they take these drugs, the effects of these drugs on them, cancer or damage to the liver. These drugs causes cancer or damage the liver. Then depression, male infertility, menstrual irregularity, kidney tumor, stunted growth, cardiac problem, undercardiac problem which includes hypertension, gastric ulcer, aggressive behavior, and the sudden death. Having seen the meaning of drugs, drug use, drug misuse, drug abuse, the implications to the health, preventions, why people abuse drugs, or reasons why they engage into drugs. Now, we are now going to answer the following questions for me. 1. Explain the meaning of the following: drug, drug use, drugs misuse, drug abuse. Then outline 3 reasons why people misuse or abuse drugs. State 3 ways by which people are initiated into drug use. Outline categories of drug use, misuse, and abuse. List 5 health consequences of drug misuse and abuse. Mention drugs popularly abused in sports. Then outline ways of preventing drug misuse and abuse. Now we have come to the end of the lesson. Do the assignment, post to the WhatsApp number 234-81-520-14380. Thanks for listening and God bless.